Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. I am your host, Jenn Washington. This is a weekly chat about socially conscious topics impacting the culture. I would like to extend my gratitude in you listening to this podcast. It means everything to me, and I hope it is clear that this subject matter is so important to me. I care about our people, our future, and making a positive change in this nation.
Welcome, guys, to another episode of Woke by Accident podcast. On this episode, we will talk about the November 2020 presidential election, Stacey Abrams, Cori Bush, and Ahmaud Arbery. Joseph R. Biden Jr. was elected the 46th President of the United States on November 7th. Mr. Biden defeated President Trump after winning Pennsylvania, which put his total of the Electoral College votes above the 270 he needed to cinch the presidency. On November 8th, after a drawn-out election week that followed the election season, President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris delivered their victory speeches before a crowd of supporters and countless viewers. Harris is the first woman, first black, and first South Asian vice president-elect.
But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last. Because every little girl watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities. And to the children of our country, regardless of your gender, our country has sent you a clear message. Dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before. But know that we will applaud you every step of the way.
So what a great moment that was. It reminded me of when President Obama came in the first time. It was that moment of surprise and excitement and goosebumps, and it's still unbelievable. The moment makes me proud as a woman, as an African American woman, and also as a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, who Kamala Harris is a member of. Just a great moment of pride and excellence. As election week went on, we learned that black women had a huge part in the way that the results turned out. According to NBC polls, 91% of black women voted for Biden, and they were instrumental in mobilizing voters to get to the polls. Stacey Abrams, who was the Democratic Party's nominee in the 2018 Georgia gubernatorial election, was credited with increasing voter turnout in Georgia. This state completely flipped blue for the first time in nearly 3 decades. That was huge. And from Missouri, former nurse and activist Cori Bush was successful in her election for the Missouri 1st Congressional District as the first black woman to represent Missouri in Congress. So another historic win for black women. So here's another interesting story about our Cori Bush. Fresh off her win, she made her debut in Congress this past Friday in D.C., and she wore a face mask that had Breonna Taylor's name on it in tribute. Well, apparently, the GOP members referred to her as Breonna Taylor and called her Breonna Taylor. So perhaps they thought that was her name because she was wearing the mask, or perhaps they are just very out of touch with what is going on in the black community. Breonna Taylor was murdered in March of 2020. There have been numerous protests across the country since that date. Had a case with the grand jury, and it's been all over the news. So it's pretty disappointing to hear that she actually did make a statement about it. Let's listen.
I saw your tweet about your mask. Is there anything you wanted to say about that? What you're hearing from your colleagues?
First of all, I am Breonna Taylor as far as I could be a black woman murdered in my bed tonight. But I am not Breonna Taylor. This Breonna Taylor was murdered in her bed at night, and she does not have justice, murdered by the police. And I just want people to, we have to stretch ourselves and pay attention to what's happening in other parts of the country. But this has been national news for a long time. People have protested in the streets with this name, and it just saddens me that that people in leadership, people that want to be in leadership, don't know the struggles that are happening to black people in this country. And it's just disheartening. And it was hurtful, absolutely hurtful. I didn't hear it once. I didn't hear it twice. I heard it several times. I'm being called Breonna Taylor today. And, but it's okay, because we'll educate and we'll make sure that people know who she is, what she stood for, that she was an award-winning EMT, in her community, that she's someone who deserves justice right now.
I love her response to that, how she did express her concern and feelings about it. However, she turned that around and made it into a positive, teachable moment. That's what we're going to have to do, because we're going to have these types of occurrences and moments. And in some cases, we will have to call people out. And in other cases, we will have to let it be a teachable moment. So I thought that was great how she handled that moment. The judge has denied the bond for the father and son accused of arming themselves, chasing, and shooting a black man jogging through the Santilla Shores neighborhood in Georgia earlier this year. This was the case of Ahmaud Arbery. I almost forgot how disturbing this case was. So the father and son, Travis McMichael and Gregory McMichael, encountered Ahmaud Arbery, who was out for a jog on an afternoon on February 23rd. He was racially profiled by the McMichaels, who suspected him without any proof of being a burglar. The two men grabbed their guns, jumped up into the pickup truck, and drove after Arbery before pulling in front of him. The third party in the incident, William Roddy Bryant, trailed them in his truck behind their vehicle, filming, and attempted to try to trap Arbery in between the two vehicles. So when Arbery tried to run past McMichael's truck, Travis McMichael got out and shot him in broad daylight in the middle of the road. The McMichaels were finally arrested on May 7th after nearly 3 months after they killed Arbery. Brian was arrested 2 weeks later, and then all three were indicted by the grand jury on malice and felony murder charges, as well as aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. This information comes from news1.com, who covered the case, and there's also a clip I would like to share regarding the case where the judge did deny the bond.
Today, a judge denies bond for Greg and Travis McMichael after an emotional hearing. Ahmaud's mother watching video of her son being shot to death in court for the first time.
Ahmaud was confused. Ahmaud had no idea that he was under attack.
Arbery's death sparked nationwide protests. Video showed the two men and their neighbor, Roddy Bryant, follow Arbery through their Brunswick neighborhood before Travis McMichael fatally shot him. After 2 days of testimony, the judge says video of the shooting shows a significant risk and threat for danger if the two were released. His comments come after state prosecutors shared a voicemail Greg McMichael left for the district attorney, who originally was responsible for the case.
This is Greg. Can you call me as soon as you possibly can? My friend and I have been involved in the shooting, and I need some advice right away. Please call me.
Defense teams for Travis and Greg McMichael argue the two have never broken the law before and were defending their neighborhood.
This case isn't about race, Your Honor. This case in the indictment is about whether or not the private citizen's arrest law and the justification statutes allowed Greg McMichael to do what he chose to do that day for the sole purpose of defending his family and his property and his community.
So I'm listening to that, and there's a video that goes along with that also, and I'm just thinking, is this lawyer seriously? Is she seriously saying this is not about race, when part of the evidence were text messages where they're calling Asian and Black people horrible names that I will not repeat, and she's talking about defending their family and their property when they pursued him and they initiated the confrontation. Unbelievable. I'm glad that there were charges filed here, so we will just have to follow this and make sure that to see that his family does get justice.
So at this time, we're going to go ahead and conclude this episode. I would again like to thank you for listening to Woke by Accident, and we would also like to invite you to follow us on our social media. On Instagram, it is Woke by Accident Podcast, and on Twitter, it is Woke by. Again, we are available on all the platforms for podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, share, like. Tell a friend. We do appreciate the feedback and the support. And every time you listen, we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again and take care.